project is a project that my father, John Stanton from Kenilworth Club, had got into because he wanted to spend some money from his Rotary Club on children's development as per the requirements for Rotary. So this was a sustainable projects, but also he very much enjoys education. And in finding this small place in center in Guatemala, we were looking for some way to attend that school that we were supporting. And we found out about the Guatemala Literacy Project. So Dad got involved in this probably about 2012. And we actually potted out to go and see it twice. One of those trips involved a gentleman who's on this call. So you'll see quite a few pictures of David on this presentation, because he very kind of came with us, and Rao and John Parkinson all came with Dad and I on our second trip, which was 2016. Ian Risley, who was RI president in 2017-18, said that GLP is the golden standard of Rotary projects, and that's due to the fact that it's sustainable, it's to do with education, and it is just absolutely massive. And I'll talk about how big it is. It got so big that in fact the Guatemala Literacy Project is in fact they're all Rotarians now themselves. But the whole point of it is going to Guatemala, which I will show you a map of where that is in a second. And my father and I used to live with my mum out in Mexico, so we speak Spanish, which is why that whole Latin America approach came in. Whereas for a lot of Rotary projects in the UK, they basically go to Africa or Asia. So this was just a subtly different approach. So the project itself is very community based, and we get to go and see a lot of the kids as we help with their education and supporting their educational development. This is for Indigenous children. This is not obviously for the upper classes of education in Guatemala. However, bear in mind that 75% of Guatemalans are illiterate. So those ladies sitting in this top corner up here are they're the mums of children who are at school, and they are probably all illiterate. So it is actually a relatively recent project. So the project itself has got 4 areas that I'm going to describe to you. And it was actually initiated in probably 1990 something. It's been running for 23 years now. And 2 American lads went down on the trip and wanted to see how they could help the country moving forward with a couple of things to do with their educational project that they were doing, and realized that there are actually no books for the children to read or to attend school with. So this is where the Guatemala Literacy Project first came about, and it was to provide textbooks to children that were needing textbooks to get to school. But obviously, as years have grown on, they've realized that actually children, there's no point in giving them books if they're illiterate, and the teachers can't teach because they're illiterate. So you end up in this weird circle of giving stuff, but you can't actually use it. So they've taught the teachers how to teach. They've done various other projects like that. They've got the textbooks, and they've actually taken it further afield and taking it on to the more senior areas, which is where you saw David just a minute ago at a computer screen with the students. So we're going to run through most of this project and how it works together tonight. And I know that Edgbaston Convention have been very generous in the past. So the things that you will see and hear are things that you've already supported. And so for that, we already say thank you very much indeed. One of the delightful things about this, all you're seeing at the moment is pictures of fun. And the whole point about the project, and the thing about the project that I love, is that you can actually go and do this. So you can actually help with the schools and how the schools get the books. So there's actually a tour every January, February time, and it's 10 days, and you can actually get to go on these tours, and you can see Rao up in the crowd over there, and you can see John Parkinson giving out pencils, and we give them a pencil, an eraser, and a pencil sharpener to the kids. But we also give extra donations, and we deal with all sorts of ages of children. And we also, you'll see how some of the books that we use to offer them. these are more towards teaching the children. There's also a sponsorship program, which we'll talk about as well. And those are 4 very dangerous gentlemen who are near some students. So we can, we'll talk about that in a second. And there are 4 books. You can see 4 different colors. You've got a blue, a pink, a green, and a yellow. And we'll talk about the books in a second. So what is the Guatemala Literacy Project? It looks a lot of fun, but what is it? It is actually where we have Rotary working with something called the Guatemala Literacy Project, who then in turn work with the Cooperación de Educación in Guatemala itself. So the cooperative that's in Guatemala is made up of hands-on people on the ground who are working with the schools to find out how we can engage these children and engage the schools and engage the parents, the teachers, the headmasters, headmistresses, but also the Ministry of Education to work with the Guatemala Literacy Project, which is US based. And that is, as it has the rondel on there, because they are in fact a Rotary Club. Well, a Rotary Club, they are Rotarians in their own right. So this is quite a unique approach, because the Guatemala Literacy Project, being a Rotary event, is able to bring in a huge number of Rotary clubs in to work with it. So over 600 Rotary clubs, 80 districts, 8 countries. It's been going for over 20 years. So over in Japan and lots in the States and Canada. You've also got your mother clubs or father clubs, whichever you want to call them, down in Guatemala, all engaged. So it's not purely an out-of-country event, and we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit extra. And there are some Europeans as well, but the UK, through Dan being involved in what he's doing and getting involved in the programme, he sits as the UK representative on that to encourage Rotary clubs and RGBI to come on board for this project. Within the country itself, this is the 2021 active programs. We're only just into 2022. You'll notice under here somewhere is Guatemala City. You can just see Guatemala up there. And you'll notice there's a sort of a proliferation of flags up this central bone, if you like. And that's because this is where Highway 1 goes. So Highway 1 is the motorway, essentially, the freeway that goes all the way down from Alaska, all the way down to Ushuaia in the bottom of Argentina. And Highway 1 is the main spine of the Guatemalan industries. And it's up this central area that we actually do our trip. They do desperately try and get out to these other areas, and you'll notice that these are textbook programs that are out there, so they're not more of the more innovative programs that they've been doing. And what you'll end up doing is seeing that the Youth Rise program, which is the sponsor program, is very much centered towards the center of the Guatemala City area. So this further east section over here is very hard to get to. It's it's all jungles, and it's not an easy approach at all. There's only a couple of main roads that go through that space. So again, this talks to the four different programs you've got, which is the Teach the Teachers How to Teach. Got the textbook program, which is on orange. We do have computer programs, and we'll talk about those in a minute. And then we have a sponsorship program. So those are the four areas that we talk to. So the SPARK program, or the Teaching the Teachers How to Teach, is for kindergarten to 6th graders, so that the kids can actually learn how to read and write. Now, bear in mind that this is not their first language. Spanish is not their first language. Spanish is their main national language. And most of these children will speak their local dialects, of which there are several. Once they're able to get past schooling, these first nursery and kindergarten areas, they then go to 7th grade, and this is where they need the textbooks. And they need one of each of the 4 textbooks to go to high school, and those are in sciences, maths, grammar, and also social sciences. So it's those 4 sort of main central areas. They have to have a book to go to school. If they don't have the books, they can't go to school. And this program allows them and supports them going to get those books. And I'll talk about that in a second. The computer program is not necessarily sponsored purely by Rotary at all. It's the books that we're supporting mainly, and the teaching of the teachers. Computers actually come from Microsoft. So Microsoft have got on board with this, and they will give dead-end computers because they can't afford the internet. The internet structure isn't there. So they have dead-end computers in which they put the latest versions of Microsoft Office Suite on there, so children can learn essential skills such as use of Word, PowerPoint, Excel, Visio, publishing, so that they can do work with computers. That works really well. And then the RISE program is the sponsor program, which can happen again from 7th to 12th grade. We'll talk about my sponsor student that I sponsored later. So the Spark program, lots of very small, very beautiful children, all in very colourful clothing. But when 1/3 of the Indigenous Guatemalans can't read or write, where are you going to get your teachers from? So your teachers, unfortunately, also have to be taught how to read and write. So what they do is they do 2 years of teacher training, and they've supported 912 teachers going through this in 94 schools. And bearing in mind, these are very basic programs, and sometimes this schoolroom would also be used by the high school and then the senior section of high school at 3 different times during the day. You get a sense of actually, although this is a very pretty picture, of the poverty involved in this area. And that one book that she is holding is probably the only version of that book in the school. So they have to work to make sure that it works well. So they actually read it, and they teach them how to engage with the children, bearing in mind that the culture in this country is to put the children on the back and feed the child over the shoulder. There's very little eye contact, so it's getting these teachers to understand that they also need to do eye contact. They also role play, so from that same book, they'll actually do the role play. And they'll also do a lot of colouring. So depending on the age of the group, you'll see that they've done some big pages where the children will group together and they'll draw and discuss what it is that they're reading in there, but they'll also do their own little books as well. And other techniques that they use are things like the spelling wall. So when they've got a word that's coming out from their stories that they're doing, how do they put those onto the board, and what letters? So there's a lot of innovative training and teaching that goes into this. This is actually a proper classroom as opposed to the pretty one we saw earlier, and this is more realistic to what we're seeing in here. And you can see Rao and David as well with myself here, as we're seeing a class being given. So it's very voyeuristic in many ways in how we go about being with the kids, but at least we do get to see how it's done. And it's just really quite amazing the energy that the children have, also the teachers have, but also the cooperative of education that they've got as well. These are the books that they do. So they then learn what they need to do, and they write out their own books that's the same as the story that they've been read. So this is us with some of the students. This is the textbooks, and this textbook down here, Dad's holding down there, which is quite interesting, is actually the 2 of us with 2 students at our previous visit, and we ended up on the front cover, the protective cover of the this is the grammar book, which is quite intriguing. And these books are given out to rural students at a much discounted rate. So if it's say £20 to buy the book, of course these kids can't afford to buy those, they need 4 books every year to get through high school. So they may be 20p, and the family put the 20p, which is 80p for the 4 books, and they put that into the fund in the school, and they use these books for 5 years. So 5 sets of students will use these books, and then they're returned because they're updated. And we've got one of those returned books here in my house actually at the moment, and they are as good as new after 5 years, because they work really hard to make sure that it works well with that, and they look after them. And we go in to do this work. So we have a lot of fun, as you can see, taking all the stuff in. We don't ask the students to come and get the books. We go and get the books. We bring them in. We put up the banners and had the whole party time. So it's a really good fun program, bringing the books into the schools. And by doing this, then time for the teacher is actually regained, so they can spend actually more time teaching rather than checking on students. So it works really, really well with that. We talked about the computer program just a minute ago with the Microsoft computers. You can see here that they're this is a school that's obviously quite well to do, but what some of them will actually do is use the software, and they will actually sell little newspapers to their local community. And with that money, we saw at one school that they'd actually then bought a monitor, so the teacher could actually teach through using a monitor on the wall rather than having to go around each of the students to make sure the student was doing it right. But they do an awful lot of work with computer work, especially at this age group. And there's David again. And bearing in mind 60% of mid-level jobs nowadays require some use of computers, these kids really have to be given that opportunity to move forward. If they stay through school, then the majority of them will actually find employment and further their or be able to further their education. It's getting them to stay in school, because obviously the thing that's calling them back is to be working in the fields with their parents, because that's where they are needed. So what they've got is this program, sponsorship program, where actually the sponsorship, I'm just going to skip over that for a second, where the sponsorship supplies you actually, in your sponsorship, you actually pay for the child to be able to come out of the fields. So I sponsored a girl called Jessica, and bizarrely enough, I sponsored her when she was about 16 to come back to high school. So she would have been doing the work of a 12-year-old at school, and she needed support to get through that stage, but she had been taken back out to the fields with her parents. And the cooperativa, they'd actually seen that she was actually a very intelligent child. And so through my sponsorship, we took her out of the field, paid the parents the money that she would have made by being in the field, but also helped her with her education. And I supported her through her 3 years of training. So she left bizarrely quite old, but she went on to college. She did get there in the end, but it was a bit of a struggle. We got her there in the end. But it's a brilliant way to be able to also support the children and get them actually through and give them that motivation to learn life skills such as being interviewed, and to work on computers and present stuff. So they do presentation work as well as thinking about where they want to work, which is lovely. And by doing this, you can break the cycle of poverty. So the oldest lady in this picture here is completely illiterate. She she'll understand a few concepts, but not very many. She's fabulous at doing her work in her fields and looking after her family. But when it comes to anything where she has to pay a bill or understand what somebody's explaining to her about bills, she just doesn't get it at all. This is her daughter in the middle. And her daughter can actually understand those concepts and will actually use her thumbprint as her marker on a signatory. So she's signed off her daughter, so the granddaughter, going through the schooling program and getting books to go through school and to college. This young lady has been through the cooperation. She's been through sponsorship. She's gone off to college and university. She works back in the cooperative, and she earns basically the whole family's earnings, and she gives the family's earnings all the money that they need to be able to grow. And it's the initiative by the parents to allow and understand that child's potential that's allowed her to become a young mum herself, who's working really, really hard, and she's working in the city, and because she's got the ability to use computer skills, she can send that money excuse me, back home to support her parents and her grandparents. So by doing this program, we actually break that cycle of poverty. So that was my little lady, my Jessica. And do bear in mind that this whole program, because it is a Rotary element as well, gets you district grant and then you get a global grant. So when we talk about global grants, we don't have to do anything in here, because the global grant is actually created by Guatemala Literacy Project. So we don't have to do any of that documentation for global granting. All we need to do is to put the donation through there, and everything that we put in, even the sponsorship program, is multiplied because of the opportunity to do that through district granting and also through global granting. So I'm going to ask if you have any questions. I'll come off screen in a second, but I just wanted to show you that this is an absolutely fabulous opportunity to join in. You can donate, but you can actually go on tour and have a really, really good fun trip in Guatemala. And the next trip is in 2023, and the next RI president is going to be going on that one in 2023. So, and you've got some people doing some really silly things with hats and all sorts of things. So yes, there's several pictures. So thank you very, very much for your continued support, because I know that you as a club have donated before, and it's very appreciated. So thank you very, very much indeed. Any questions?